The courtroom carried the weight of 100 years of judgment. Federal Court of Colorado, third floor, where marble columns rose toward a ceiling
I swear
that
to
had
tell the
witnessed
truth,
confessions, verdicts,
the whole
and the
truth,
slow grinding
and
machinery
nothing
of
but the
American
truth.
justice. 300 spectators filled the gallery, their collective breath creating a low hum that underscored every word spoken from the witness stand. Violet Ashford approached that stand with measured steps, her posture betraying nothing of the storm raging beneath her calm exterior. At 18, she possessed the kind of stillness that unsettled people twice her age. Auburn hair pulled back severely from a face that might have been parroted if not for the hardness in her eyes. Those eyes swept the courtroom, once cataloging faces and exits with the efficiency of someone who had learned to assess threats before they materialized. The bailiff administered the oath. Violet's voice carried clear and steady through the chamber, and in the defendant's section, Victor Crane shifted almost imperceptibly in his seat. She caught the movement without appearing to look registered, the tightening of his shoulders and the microtension around his jaw. Fear. The most powerful man in Silver Pine, Colorado, was afraid of an 18-year-old girl, and that knowledge settled into her chest like an ember waiting to ignite. Prosecutor Catherine Walsh began with foundational questions. State your full name for the record. Describe your relationship to Thomas and Evelyn Ashford. Tell the jury what happened on the night of December 15th.
I swear to tell the truth,
Violet answered each
the whole
query
truth,
with precision,
and nothing
her tone
but the
flat and
truth.
factual, her hands folded in her lap like a student reciting memorized text. But her attention never wavered from Victor Crane's face. She watched him flinch when she described the zip ties cutting into her wrists. She watched his pupils dilate when she named his associates. She watched his mask of innocence crack one involuntary expression at a time. The prosecutor asked her to describe what Victor Crane had said during her captivity before the rescue team arrived. Violet drew a breath that seemed to pull 4 years of grief and rage into her lungs. Her voice dropped to barely above a whisper, yet in the absolute silence of that courtroom, every syllable struck like a hammer on steel. She repeated his exact words, matching his casual cruelty, his absolute certainty that she would never leave that abandoned mine alive. Your father stuck his nose where it did not belong. He and your mother had to die to protect my business. And now you will die for the same reason. The gallery erupted into chaos. Reporters shouted questions over each other. The judge's gavel cracked against its block with increasing fury. Victor Crane's attorney was on his feet, objecting to hearsay, to prejudicial statements, to anything that might stem the tide of damnation
I swear to
pouring
tell
from
the
the
truth,
witness stand.
the whole
Violet
truth,
remained motionless
and nothing
through it
but
all,
the truth.
her storm-colored gaze fixed on the man who had murdered her parents. When order was finally restored, she turned slowly to face the rows behind the defendant's table. Mayor Helena Frost sat rigid in her designer suit, pearls gleaming at her throat. Councilman Peters had gone pale beneath his artificial tan. 3 other pillars of Silver Pine's establishment stared back at her with expressions ranging from contempt to barely concealed terror. The words left her mouth before anyone could intervene. Victor Crane did not act alone, and I can prove it. The courtroom exploded again, louder this time, angrier and more desperate. Helena Frost attempted to rise but found her path blocked by U.S. Marshals who had received quiet instructions from the prosecution team. The judge threatened contempt charges. Cameras flashed in violation of court rules that suddenly seemed meaningless. In the front row of the gallery, directly behind the prosecution's table, Frank Thornwood allowed himself a single nod of acknowledgement. Pride swelled in his chest alongside grief and rage, and something he had not felt in years: hope. He was 62 years old, retired from 3.5 decades of hunting men who believed themselves above the law, and he had thought his story was finished.
I swear to tell the
7
truth,
weeks earlier, he had
the
not
whole
even known
truth,
Violet existed.
and nothing but the truth.
7 weeks earlier, he had been a ghost, haunting empty rooms, waiting for death to catch up with him. Then the letter arrived. Say, the morning that changed everything began like all the others since Margaret died. Frank Thornwood stood at the kitchen window of the ranch house, watching December clouds gather over the peaks to the west. The coffee in his hand had gone cold an hour ago. He had not slept properly in months, had not eaten a full meal in weeks, had not found a single reason to care about either deficiency. Thornwood Ranch sprawled across 500 acres of Colorado Mountain Valley, a patchwork of pasture and pine forest that had belonged to his family for 4 generations. The Victorian main house sat at the center like a dowager queen surveying her diminished kingdom. Too many rooms for one man, Too many memories embedded in walls and floorboards, in the particular way afternoon light fell through western windows. Margaret had loved this house. She had filled it with laughter and warmth and the particular chaos of raising three boys while her husband chased fugitives across state lines. She had forgiven his absences, celebrated his returns, held the family together through deployments and manhunts, and the thousand small crises that accumulated over 35 years of marriage.
I swear to tell the truth,
cancer took her slowly.
the whole truth,
Pancreatic
and nothing
stage
but
4
the
by the
truth.
time anyone thought to look. Frank had watched her shrink and fade over 18 months, had held her hand at the end when the morphine finally stopped working, and the only mercy left was release. Something in him had died with her, some essential spark that had kept him moving forward despite everything the job had shown him about human nature. Now he was 62 years old, a widower with three grown sons who called out of obligation rather than affection, and he was simply waiting for what he could not say. The end, perhaps. Some final accounting that would let him close his eyes and not have to open them again. The sound of tires on gravel interrupted his morbid reverie. He watched a dust-covered pickup truck roll up the long drive, recognized it as belonging to his youngest son, and felt the familiar mixture of love and regret that characterized all his relationships with his children. They were good men, all three of them. They had simply learned to be good men without him. Kieran climbed out of the truck with the easy grace of someone who worked with his hands for a living. 30 years old, dark hair inherited from Margaret, green eyes that missed nothing and revealed less. He ran a garage in town, spent his days diagnosing engine troubles and avoiding complicated conversations. The
I swear
screen
to
door
tell the
creaked
truth,
as Kieran entered the kitchen.
the whole truth,
He glanced
and
at the
nothing
cold
but the
coffee in
truth.
Frank's hand but said nothing about it. Instead, he dropped an envelope on the table. Its surface spotted with stains from careless handling. No return address, postmarked from Grand Junction, 100 miles west. Came to the garage by mistake. Addressed to you. Thought it might be important. Frank stared at the envelope without touching it. His name was written across the front in handwriting that stopped his heart mid-beat. He knew that handwriting as well as his own. He had seen it on birthday cards and Christmas letters, and one final note left on a kitchen counter 4 years ago, the morning Thomas and Evelyn departed for their last drive through the mountains. Thomas Ashford had been his half-brother, 15 years his junior, the product of their mother's second marriage to a quiet accountant named Harold. The age gap had prevented real closeness during childhood, but something shifted when Thomas joined the FBI. They had discovered common ground in the pursuit of justice, in the particular satisfaction of watching handcuffs close around deserving wrists. Thomas had been brilliant, relentless, idealistic in ways Frank had long since abandoned. He had also been dead for 4 years, killed alongside his wife in a car crash that never sat right in Frank's gut. His hands trembled as he opened the envelope.
I
The
swear to
paper
tell the
inside
truth,
was worn soft, as
the
if
whole
it had been
truth,
folded
and nothing
unfolded
but the
many
truth.
times before being sealed. The date at the top was 4 years old, written days before Thomas took that final drive. The first words struck like bullets. If you are reading this, I am dead. Kieran watched his father's face drain of color. In 30 years, he had never seen the old man look afraid. He had never seen those steady hands shake like leaves in a wind. The letter continued in Thomas's careful script. He wrote about an investigation that had consumed his final years, about a criminal enterprise buried in the bones of Silverpine, about corruption that stretched from the mayor's office to the Mexican border. He wrote about Victor Crane and Crane Industries, about abandoned mines repurposed for drug trafficking, about shell companies and offshore accounts, and bodies that would never be found. Then he wrote words that changed everything. Violet is alive. Frank read the sentence 3 times before meaning penetrated shock. Violet, Thomas's daughter. 14 years old the last time Frank saw her, a quiet girl with her mother's perceptive gaze and her father's stubborn jaw. Everyone believed she had died with her parents. The coroner's report mentioned 3 bodies, though fire had made identification difficult. Frank had attended the funeral, had watched 3 caskets lowered
swear
into
to tell the
Colorado
truth,
soil, had
the
wept
whole
for the
truth,
first time in decades.
and nothing but the truth.
But one of those caskets had been empty. Thomas's letter explained everything. He had known they were coming for him. His wife Evelyn possessed an unusual gift, an ability to read micro-expressions and body language with almost supernatural accuracy. She had seen the threat materializing weeks before it arrived, had identified the guilt and fear in people who should have displayed neither. They had made a plan. Violet would be sent to a foster family in Montana, under a false name protected by distance and anonymity until it was safe to retrieve her. Thomas and Evelyn would follow as soon as they could arrange their own disappearance. They never got the chance. The letter included instructions, a name and address in Helena, Montana, a password that would identify Frank as family, and a warning that made his blood congeal. Violet has inherited her mother's gift. If they find her, they will kill her for the same reason they killed us. She is not just a witness. She is proof that we were right about everything. Frank lowered the letter and stared at the wall at a faded photograph of Thomas and Evelyn on their wedding day. His brother had been murdered. His sister-in-law had been murdered. And his niece, the girl he had mourned for 4 years, was alive somewhere in Montana, unaware that the men who killed her
I
parents
swear to
were
tell
still
the
hunting.
truth,
Something
the whole
shifted
truth,
in Frank's chest.
and nothing but the
The
truth.
gray fog that had surrounded him since Margaret's death began to lift, replaced by something sharper and more familiar. It was the feeling he used to get at the start of a manhunt, when the target's face was fresh and the trail still warm. Purpose, direction, a reason to keep breathing that had nothing to do with passive waiting. His voice came out steadier than expected. "Get your brothers. We need to talk." The Thornwood brothers arrived within the hour, summoned by Kieran's terse phone calls and the weight of something unprecedented in his tone. Dominic came first, his black pickup taking the mountain curves faster than safety allowed. At 35, he was the eldest. Built like the Marine he had been before 2 tours in Afghanistan left him with scars he never discussed and a 1,000-yard stare that appeared without warning. He lived alone in a cabin at the edge of the ranch property, tending cattle and avoiding human contact with equal dedication. The military had trained him to be a weapon. Coming home had taught him that weapons were difficult to store safely. Sebastian arrived 20 minutes later in a silver sedan that looked out of place among trucks and gravel. The middle child at 33, he had escaped Silverpine for Yale Law School and a partnership track at a Denver
I
firm
swear to tell the
before
truth,
returning 3 years ago
the whole
to open
truth,
his own practice.
and nothing but the
His
truth.
brown hair was perpetually rumpled, his smile perpetually ready, but behind the charm operated a mind as sharp as any Frank had encountered. Sebastian had graduated top of his class, could have worked anywhere in the country, and had chosen to come home for reasons he had never fully explained. They gathered around the kitchen table where Frank had taught them to play poker decades ago, where Margaret had served holiday dinners, where a family had once existed instead of the collection of polite strangers they had become. Frank laid the letter flat on the scarred wood and watched his sons read it one by one, their expressions shifting from confusion to disbelief to something that looked remarkably like the rage burning in his own chest. Dominic finished first. He leaned back in his chair, jaw tight, hands flat on the table in the posture of a man resisting the urge to hit something. Thomas was murdered. Sebastian looked up from the letter, his lawyer's mind already parsing implications. And Violet is alive. She has been hiding in Montana for 4 years under a false name, which means the coroner's report was falsified, which means local law enforcement participated in the cover-up. Kieran had remained silent since his brothers arrived, watching and cataloging with the same precision he applied to diagnosing engine
I swear to
trouble.
tell the truth,
When he finally spoke,
the
his
whole
words
truth,
cut through
and
speculation
nothing but
like a
the
blade.
truth.
None of this matters if we do not find Violet first. If she received a similar letter, if she is heading here, she is walking straight into a trap. The Cranes have been watching this family for 4 years. They will know the moment she arrives. Frank felt cold certainty settle in his stomach. Kieran was right. Victor Crane had built his empire on information, on knowing what his enemies planned before they planned it themselves. If Violet had boarded a bus for Silverpine, the Cranes would know. They had eyes everywhere, ears in every conversation. They had transformed the town into a surveillance state without anyone noticing. Decisions came quickly after that, shaped by Frank's decades of experience and his son's various expertise. Sebastian would continue gathering evidence using his legal practice as cover. Kieran would monitor the garage where travelers often stopped before heading into town. Dominic would establish security around the ranch. And Frank would wait at the bus station every day if necessary, watching for a girl with auburn hair who did not know how much danger awaited her. The Greyhound station in Silverpine occupied a converted gas station from the 60s, its paint peeling and its windows clouded with decades of diesel exhaust. 3 buses passed through
I
daily
swear to tell
carrying
the truth,
passengers between Denver
the
and
whole
Points
truth,
West.
and nothing but
Frank
the
had
truth.
positioned his truck across the street angled so he could observe everyone who disembarked without being observed in turn. 6 days of watching had produced nothing but a stiff back and burning eyes. He had memorized the faces of regular travelers, learned the schedules of local workers, cataloged every vehicle that passed within visual range. His coffee had gone cold countless times. His patience had not wavered once. On the 7th day, she appeared. The bus pulled in at 9:15, right on schedule. Frank watched the door hiss open, watched passengers climb down with the stiff movements of people who had been sitting too long. An elderly couple with matching luggage, a young man in military uniform, a mother with a toddler on her hip, and then last of all, a girl. She was thin in a way that spoke of meals skipped and money stretched too far. Auburn hair pulled back in a messy braid, loose strands framing a face that Frank recognized immediately despite 4 years of change. It was Thomas's face feminized and softened with Evelyn's perceptive gaze staring out from beneath a furrowed brow. She wore a jacket too light for Colorado winter, carried a backpack that had seen better decades, and moved with the careful alertness of someone who expected the world to hurt her.
I swear to tell the
Frank's
truth,
chest constricted.
the whole truth,
14 when
and
he had
nothing
last
but
seen
the
her,
truth.
a quiet child who liked to draw and rarely smiled. Now 18, a woman by legal definition, if not by experience, a survivor of something he could not yet imagine. He was out of the truck before conscious thought engaged, crossing the street with long strides that protested through healing knees. She saw him coming and tensed immediately, her body shifting into a defensive posture that spoke of practice. Her hand moved toward her jacket pocket, where something bulged in a shape Frank recognized from decades of carrying his own. He stopped 10 feet away, hands visible at his sides, and spoke the password Thomas had included in his letter. Her face cycled through emotions faster than most people could track. Confusion, recognition, and then finally a crumbling of the walls she had built around herself as tears began streaming down her cheeks. She crossed the remaining distance in a rush, her arms wrapping around him with a desperation that stole his breath. He held her as she sobbed, this girl he barely knew. This child who had lost everything and carried the burden alone for 4 years. The warmth of another person felt foreign against his chest. He had forgotten what it meant to be needed. When she finally pulled back, her voice emerged steady despite the tears. I did not know if you would come. I did not know if anyone would
I swear
come.
to tell the truth,
Frank cupped her face
the
in
whole
weathered
truth,
hands, studying
and nothing
features
but
that
the
mixed
truth.
both her parents into something uniquely her own. I read your father's letter. I know what happened to him and your mother. And I am not going to let the people who did it hurt you. Something shifted in her expression, a hardening that should not have been possible in someone so young. I did not come here to be protected. I came here to find the truth. I came here to make them pay. Frank recognized that look. He had warned himself many times when the system failed and justice required harder roads. Then we will do it together. But first we need to get you somewhere safe. This town has eyes everywhere. He knows. The words landed like stones dropped into still water. Frank stared at his niece, watching for any sign of fear, finding only the calm certainty of someone who had already accepted the worst. I saw them when I got off the bus. 2 men in a black SUV parked behind the hardware store. They were watching the station, and when I stepped out, one of them made a phone call. Her storm-colored gaze met his without flinching. I have my mother's gift, Uncle Frank. I can read people. I saw the recognition in their eyes before they could hide it. Frank's mind raced through implications. The Cranes had been watching the bus station, which meant they had
I swear to tell the
anticipated Violet's
truth,
return.
the
And
whole
now they
truth,
knew she was
and
here,
nothing but the
which meant the
truth.
countdown had begun. Every minute that passed was a minute the enemy used to prepare. He took her hand and led her toward the truck, his attention scanning streets for threats that could materialize at any moment. Tell me about this gift of yours, as much as you can, as quickly as you can. Violet settled into the passenger seat, her gaze fixed on the rearview mirror, watching for pursuit. It is not magic, not really. My brain processes information differently than most people. Micro-expressions, body language, changes in breathing, and pupil dilation. When someone is lying or hiding something, there are signals. Most people cannot perceive them consciously. I cannot miss them. Your mother was the same way. Better than me. Much better. She could read people she had never met, detect deception from across a room. I have to concentrate, have to be close, have to really focus. But it is improving. Every year the signals become clearer. Frank turned onto the mountain road leading to the ranch, pushing the truck harder than the curves warranted. Your father wrote that he used your mother's ability to gather evidence. She could tell when his sources were lying, when witnesses were holding back. Yes, that is how
I
they
swear to
figured
tell the
out who was
truth,
involved.
the whole
Mom would
truth,
meet with
and
people
nothing
and
but
ask
the truth.
innocent questions and observe their reactions. She identified Mayor Frost Councilman Peters, two of the deputies. She saw the guilt they were trying to hide, and the Cranes found out. Violet's voice dropped, and for a moment the hard shell cracked. Someone told them. Someone in law enforcement, maybe FBI. Mom and Dad never identified who. They just knew that one week they were making progress, and the next week someone was following them everywhere. She reached into her jacket and produced a worn photograph, its edges soft from years of handling. Two faces looked up at Frank from the image. Thomas in a ridiculous Hawaiian shirt, Evelyn laughing at something beyond the frame. A backyard barbecue from years before the investigation began. This is all I have left of them. Frank glanced at the photo, felt familiar grief sharpen into something more useful. You have more than that. You have their courage, you have their determination, and you have family who will stand with you no matter what comes. They crested the final hill, and Thornwood Ranch spread out below buildings nestled in the valley like something from a postcard. Smoke curled from the main house chimney. Dominic's pickup waited near the barn. Frank allowed himself a moment of hope.
I swear to tell the
They were
truth,
home.
the
They were
whole
together.
truth, and nothing but
Whatever
the
the
truth.
Cranes sent against them, they would face it as a family. The attack came at 2 in the morning, 3 days after Violet's arrival. Frank had been dozing in a chair by the living room window, his service pistol in his lap, when the first motion sensor triggered. The alarm was silent, a vibration in the receiver clipped to his belt, but it snapped him to full alertness instantly. He signaled to Dominic, stationed by the back door, and together they moved to wake the others. Kieran was already awake, green eyes glinting in the darkness. Sebastian emerged from the guest room with disheveled hair and a shotgun that looked incongruous in his lawyer's hands. Violet appeared at the top of the stairs, her face pale but her movements controlled. They took positions throughout the house, covering approaches and exits, waiting for whatever was coming. The motion sensors triggered again, closer now, multiple contacts moving through the tree line toward the main structure. The first window shattered at 2:15. A rock wrapped in cloth, trailing smoke. Tear gas, not bullets. Frank understood immediately. The Cranes did not want a crime scene. They wanted confusion, chaos, and opportunity to grab Violet and disappear before anyone could respond. Gas masks, basement. Now they retreated in orderly
I swear to
fashion,
tell the
each
truth,
covering the other, smoke
the whole
billowing through the
truth,
first floor
and nothing but
and
the truth.
obscuring everything in white haze. Violet stumbled on the basement stairs, eyes streaming despite the mask, and Dominic caught her before she fell. They reached the bottom together, 8 feet of concrete and steel between them and whatever was happening above. Silence stretched for 3 heartbeats. Then the sound of breaking glass, footsteps on hardwood, voices shouting orders in the haze. Frank assessed with the speed of 3 decades' experience. 4 attackers, maybe 5, searching the house. His family was safe momentarily, but the basement had only one exit. If the attackers found it, they would be trapped. He turned to Dominic. Stay with them. Protect Violet. I am going to clear the house. Dad, the basement door is the choke point. If they find it, you are the last line. I need you here. Dominic's jaw tightened, but he recognized the tactical logic. He nodded once. Frank slipped through the basement door with his pistol raised, senses straining against smoke and darkness. The next 90 seconds were a blur of controlled violence. He moved through the house like a ghost muscle memory, overriding conscious thought. The first attacker went down to a pistol whip across the temple. The second caught an elbow in the throat and crumpled silently.
I swear
The
to
third
tell the
was waiting
truth,
around a corner
the
with a
whole
knife
truth,
that sliced
and
across
nothing
Frank's
but the
forearm
truth.
before he could react. He grabbed the knife hand, twisted until bone snapped, drove his forehead into the attacker's nose. But there was a fourth coming up behind while Frank was engaged. He spun too slowly, saw the gun rising toward his chest, knew he would not be fast enough. The shot never came. Dominic materialized from smoke like an apparition, Marine training taking over completely. He hit the fourth attacker from the side, took him to the ground, had him unconscious in under 3 seconds. I told you to stay with them. Dominic's expression did not change. Kieran has them. You needed backup. Frank wanted to argue, but there was no time. They secured the 4 attackers with zip ties, cleared the remaining rooms, found no additional threats. The smoke was dissipating When Violet's body emerged from the basement, her face tight with controlled fear. There is a fifth one outside. I can see headlights moving away from the house. Someone is reporting back. Frank cursed under his breath. Victor Crane would know within minutes that his team had failed. He would adjust, adapt, escalate. They needed the evidence Thomas had hidden. They needed it now. The wine cellar beneath the old Thornwood homestead had not been opened in 15 years.
I swear to tell the truth,
Cobwebs
the whole
hung from the
truth,
ceiling
and nothing
like
but the
funeral
truth.
shrouds, and the air carried the musty weight of forgotten decades. Frank descended stone steps with a flashlight in one hand and his bandaged arm throbbing with each heartbeat. Violet followed close behind her presence, a comfort he had not expected to need. Thomas's letter had been specific about the hiding place, behind the third brick from the southeast corner. Frank counted carefully, fingers tracing mortar lines that crumbled at slight pressure. The brick shifted under his touch, revealing a hollow space the original builders never intended. The metal box inside was smaller than expected, no larger than a shoebox but heavy with the weight of secrets. He carried it to a workbench and worked the corroded latch while Violet stood beside him, barely breathing. Inside, 4 years of investigation lay preserved against moisture and time. A USB drive wrapped in waterproof plastic. 3 leather journals filled with Thomas's careful handwriting. Photographs printed on professional paper. And a manila envelope stuffed with documents bearing the letterhead of Crane Industries. Frank exhaled slowly. This is everything he gathered before they killed him. Violet reached for one of the journals, her hands trembling slightly. 2 years of work. 2 years of risking everything. The first journal documented Thomas's
I swear to
initial
tell the
suspicions.
truth,
Mining
the whole
operations
truth,
continuing
and nothing but
despite
the
reports of depleted veins. Truck traffic increasing after midnight and vanishing before dawn. Workers appearing on payroll who never showed up to actual jobs. Small details that meant nothing in isolation but formed damning patterns when assembled. The second journal went deeper. Thomas had identified 6 shell companies funneling money through Crane Industries, each connected to accounts in the Cayman Islands, Panama, and Switzerland. He had traced shipments of chemicals consistent with methamphetamine production to abandoned mine shafts on Crane property. He had documented meetings between Victor Crane and men whose faces appeared in DEA databases. But it was the third journal that stopped Frank's heart. Thomas had created a diagram of the conspiracy, a web of connections spreading far beyond Silver Pine's borders. Victor Crane sat at the center, but lines extended to names in Denver, Santa Fe, Phoenix, Salt Lake City. This was not a local operation. This was a regional network spanning 4 states, moving product worth hundreds of millions annually. And at the top of the diagram above even Victor's name was a single notation that changed everything. RC, true architect, Raymond Crane, Victor's father, the 72-year-old former state senator who had
I swear to
supposedly
tell the
retired
truth,
from public life a decade
the
ago.
whole truth,
The
and
kindly
nothing but the
grandfather
truth.
figure everyone in Silver Pine respected, the mastermind behind everything. Frank set down the journal and met Violet's gaze. Your father discovered that Victor was not the leader. He was just the public face. Raymond Crane built this empire and has been running it from the shadows for 40 years. Violet absorbed this with the stillness that had become her trademark. That explains why Dad was so worried about the scope of what he found. He thought he was investigating local corruption. Instead, he uncovered something spanning the entire Southwest. They spent 6 hours reviewing everything Thomas had gathered. By the time they emerged from the cellar, the sun had set and the mountains had become silhouettes against a purple sky. We cannot take this to local authorities. They are compromised too deeply. Frank's mind was already racing through options. The FBI regional office might have leaks given what happened to your father. We need to go higher. Find someone we can trust absolutely. Violet pulled a page from one of the journals. Dad mentioned a witness, a woman named Maria Santos, who worked as Crane Industries' chief accountant. She resigned 3 years ago, right after he died. He believed she knew where all the bodies were buried.
I
Frank
swear to
remembered
tell
the
the
name.
truth,
Maria Santos
whole
had been
truth,
Thomas's
and
potential
nothing but the
breakthrough,
truth.
someone with inside knowledge who might be willing to talk. But she had vanished after resigning, her trail going cold. If we can find her, if she kept copies of what she knew, we would have corroboration for everything Thomas gathered. Sebastian can help track her down. He has resources for finding people who do not want to be found. Inside the ranch house, the family waited with expressions ranging from worried to impatient. Frank laid the journals on the table and explained what they had discovered, walking them through Thomas's investigation step by step. When he finished, Sebastian spoke first. This is bigger than local prosecution. We are talking about RICO charges, possibly national security concerns, if the cartel connections are as deep as Thomas documented, which means we need bulletproof evidence. Dominic's voice carried the weight of experience with bureaucracies that demanded perfection before acting. What Thomas gathered is damning, but defense attorneys could challenge chain of custody. We need living witnesses to corroborate the paper trail. Kieran looked up from the sensor he was recalibrating. I have a contact in Pueblo who specializes in finding people who do not want to be found. If Maria Santos is still in Colorado, he can locate her within 48 hours. 2 days later, Frank and Dominic drove to Pueblo
I swear
with
to tell the
Violet in
truth,
the back seat.
the
The
whole
apartment
truth,
complex where
and
Maria
nothing but the
Santos
truth.
lived was a modest 3-story building in a working-class neighborhood, the kind of place where someone hides not from wealthy criminals, but from everything. Frank knocked on the door of apartment 2B, while Dominic covered the hallway. The woman who answered looked older than 45, with black hair shot through with gray and dark circles under eyes that widened with instant recognition. You look just like him. For a moment, I thought it was Thomas. Frank kept his voice gentle. Mrs. Santos, my name is Frank Thornwood. Thomas was my brother. I think you know why I am here. Maria's hand gripped the door frame as if she might collapse without its support. For a long moment, she said nothing. Then her gaze found Violet, and something shifted. The daughter. He showed me photographs. He talked about you constantly. She stepped back, a silent invitation. They talked for 3 hours. Maria's story confirmed everything Thomas had documented and added layers of horror that even his thorough investigation had missed. She had worked for Crane Industries for 15 years, rising to chief accountant through competence and discretion. By the time she understood what the company truly did, she was too deep to escape cleanly. I processed
I
payments
swear
to
to tell the
cartels.
truth,
I created
the
shell
whole
companies
truth,
to launder
and
drug
nothing
money.
but the truth.
I buried evidence of bodies disposed in abandoned mine shafts. Her hands shook as she spoke. Every month I told myself next month I would leave, but they had too much on me. If I ran, they would destroy me. If I talked, they would kill me. Then Thomas approached her. I was ready to cooperate. I'd copied everything. I was going to give it all to Thomas and disappear. Her voice broke. Then I heard about the accident. They killed him because of me. Frank shook his head slowly. They killed him because of what he knew. Your decision to run is the only reason you are still alive. Violet leaned forward, her gift focused entirely on the woman before her. You kept the copies. I can see it in your face. You still have everything you were going to give my father. Maria's eyes met Violet's, and something passed between them that required no words. After a long moment, she walked to her bedroom and returned carrying a lockbox. Insurance. If anything happened to me, a lawyer was instructed to send this to journalists. The contents exceeded Frank's hopes. Double ledgers showing true Crane Industries finances, communication records between Victor Crane and cartel representatives, photographs of meetings that should never have happened,
I
and
swear to
most
tell the
damning of all, a
truth,
recording of Raymond
the whole
Crane
truth,
discussing the
and
elimination
nothing
of a
but the
threat
truth.
named Thomas Ashford. That voice, Violet's face went pale as marble. I would know it anywhere. Raymond Crane ordered my parents killed. This is proof. Frank met Maria's eyes. If you testify, we can protect you. Federal witness protection, new identity, the works. I still have contacts in the Marshal Service who owe me favors. Maria was silent for a long moment. Then she looked at Violet, at the daughter of the man who had tried to save her. For Thomas, and for everyone else they have hurt, I will do it. They left Pueblo as the sun began to set, Maria Santos riding in the back seat with her lockbox clutched against her chest like a talisman. Frank called Sebastian from the road. This is enough. Combined with what Thomas gathered, we have grounds for a federal RICO case. But Sebastian's voice carried tension that turned Frank's blood to ice. Dad, we have a problem. Someone leaked information. I do not know who, but Victor Crane knows you went to Pueblo. He knows about Maria. Frank's eyes went to the rearview mirror just as the first black SUV appeared behind them. We have company. 2 more vehicles emerged from side roads ahead, blocking escape routes. 3 against 1. Bad odds for a
I swear to
firefight
tell
on a
the
mountain
truth,
road.
the
Frank
whole
made a
truth,
decision in the
and nothing
span of a
but the
heartbeat.
truth.
Dominic, when I stopped, get them out. The old logging road is a quarter-mile ahead on the right. Take them through the forest to the ranger station. Dad, that is an order. The SUV rammed them from behind as Frank hit the brakes, spinning the truck into a controlled skid. Doors opened from all three hostile vehicles, simultaneously men pouring out with weapons drawn. But Dominic was already moving, pulling Violet and Maria from the truck and shoving them toward the tree line. His rifle barked twice, covering fire that sent attackers diving for cover. Run! Violet hesitated for one terrible moment, her eyes meeting Frank's across the distance. 4 years of loss and longing passed between them in an instant. Then she turned and ran. Maria stumbling beside her, Dominic's massive form shielding them as they disappeared into pine shadows. Frank emptied his magazine into the lead SUV, forcing attackers to keep their heads down. He managed to wound 2 before a bullet caught his shoulder, spinning him sideways. A second bullet hit his thigh and he went down. Victor Crane stepped out of the lead vehicle, a smile on his face that promised this was far from over. The hours that followed blurred together in a haze of pain and defiance. Frank woke in a warehouse, hands bound behind his back, shoulder and thigh, screaming with every heartbeat.
And nothing but
Victor
the truth.
Crane sat across from him in a folding chair, looking for all the world like a man discussing a business proposition over coffee. Marshall Thornwood, I have heard much about you over the years. Thomas spoke highly of his brother. Frank said nothing. He focused on cataloging injuries, assessing surroundings, searching for any opportunity. I am going to make this simple. Victor's voice was calm, reasonable. You have something I want. The evidence Thomas gathered. The witness, Maria Santos. And most importantly, the girl. Frank met Victor's eyes with a steady gaze. You are going to have to kill me. Victor sighed. I was hoping for practicality, but I suppose stubbornness runs in your family. He walked to a table where several implements lay arranged in neat rows. We have time. The forest is large and my men are searching. Eventually they will find your son and the women. In the meantime, you and I can become better acquainted. The torture began. Victor was methodical, clearly experienced in extracting information from unwilling sources. But Frank had been trained to resist interrogation. He had spent 35 years hunting men worse than Victor Crane. He gave them nothing. Hours passed. Frank lost track of time. Pain became a constant companion, consuming everything else. And then when consciousness was beginning to slip away, he heard gunfire. Not the controlled shots of Victor's men. This was sustained, rhythmic fire from someone who knew exactly what they were doing. Dominic. The warehouse door exploded inward, and Frank caught a glimpse of his eldest son moving through chaos like an instrument of divine wrath. Marine training combined with paternal rage, a combination Victor's hired thugs were utterly unprepared to face. Victor ran. Dominic did not chase him. Instead, he appeared at Frank's side, cutting bonds, checking wounds, his face a mask of professional focus that cracked only when Frank managed a weak smile. Took you long enough. Had to get the women to safety first. Dominic's voice was rough with emotion. Sheriff Cooper is on his way with real deputies. FBI is mobilizing from Denver. It is over, Dad. Not yet. Victor got away. He will not get far. Sebastian has been on the phone with Justice Department contacts all night. They are seizing Crane Industries' assets as we speak. Victor has nowhere to run. But Victor Crane was not a man who accepted defeat easily. For 3 weeks, he remained a ghost, moving through a network of safe houses that decades of criminal enterprise had established. Every FBI lead turned cold.
I swear to tell the truth.
Every informant who might have known his location either disappeared or met convenient accidents. Frank recovered in a Denver hospital, his shoulder and thigh healing with the speed of a man who refused to stay down. Violet visited every day, her presence a comfort that helped him endure physical therapy and the frustrating limitations of his battered body. Then on the 22nd day, Raymond Crane walked into his hospital room. The old man was frail, leaning on a cane that trembled with every step. At 72, he looked every year of his age, and more skin-gray eyes, sunken, powerful frame reduced to bone and determination. Frank's hand moved toward the call button, but Raymond held up a palm. I am not here to threaten you, Marshall. I am here to make a deal. Frank studied the man who had built an empire on blood, who had ordered his brother murdered, who had spent 4 decades corrupting everything he touched. I am listening. Raymond lowered himself into a chair with the careful movements of someone managing constant pain. I am dying. Pancreatic cancer, stage 4. the doctors gave me 6 months a year ago. I have already exceeded their predictions, but time is running out. Frank said nothing. I did not order Thomas's death. That was Victor acting alone without my knowledge or consent. When I found out what he had done, I was
I
furious.
swear to tell the truth,
Raymond's faded eyes met
the
Frank's.
whole truth,
Thomas
and nothing
Ashford
but the
was
truth.
an honest man doing honest work. I could have respected that, found a way to coexist. Instead, my son turned him into a martyr and created the very situation we now face. You expect me to believe you had nothing to do with it. I expect you to believe I am here to help you catch my son. Because whatever else I have done, I built my organization on certain principles. No killing of innocents, no targeting of families, no harming of children. Victor violated every one of those principles when he murdered Thomas and Evelyn, and now he is hunting their daughter. Raymond reached into his coat and produced a USB drive. Everything is on here. Victor's location, his remaining assets, the names of everyone still loyal to him. Enough to end this tonight if your FBI friends move quickly. Frank took the drive, weighing it in his palm. Why? Because I am going to die soon, and I want to die knowing my son paid for what he did. Call it a dying man's conscience, or call it revenge for how Victor destroyed everything I built. Raymond stood leaning heavily on his cane. One more thing. The girl Violet, she has her mother's gift, does she not? Frank's expression hardened. That is not your concern. Raymond smiled, a ghost of the
I swear to tell the
expression that
truth,
had once charmed voters.
the whole truth,
When this is over,
and
she
nothing
will
but
be
the
the
truth.
most valuable person in law enforcement. The ability to know when someone is lying just by looking at them. Agencies will fight over her. Make sure she chooses wisely. He turned toward the door, then paused. I am sorry about your brother Marshall, for what little that is worth from a man like me. Then he was gone. The FBI moved on Victor Crane's compound that same night. It was a fortified ranch in rural Arizona, protected by motion sensors, armed guards, and a man with nothing left to lose. The raid began at 4 in the morning when darkness was deepest and the human body most vulnerable. Victor did not go quietly. A gunfight erupted that lasted 45 minutes, leaving 3 agents wounded and 7 of Victor's men dead. When it ended, Victor Crane was dragged from wreckage in handcuffs. His empire shattered, his freedom gone, his future measured in decades of prison cells. Frank watched the arrest on a hospital television, Violet beside him, her hand gripping his with strength that belied her slender frame. It is over. Her voice was barely a whisper. He will never hurt anyone again. Frank squeezed her hand. Your parents would be proud of you. My parents would want me to finish what they started. That means testifying at his
I
trial.
swear to tell the truth,
That means making sure
the
the
whole
world
truth,
knows
and
exactly
nothing
what
but
Victor
the
Crane
truth.
did. Frank nodded slowly. Then that is exactly what we will do. The trial of Victor Crane became the most watched legal proceeding in Colorado history. Day after day, witnesses took the stand to describe a criminal enterprise that had operated in plain sight for 4 decades. FBI forensic accountants walked the jury through millions of dollars in drug money. DEA agents testified about the pipeline moving methamphetamine across 4 states. Former Crane Industries employees granted immunity for cooperation described bodies disposed in abandoned mine shafts. Maria Santos testified for 3 days, her voice steady despite the fear that must have consumed her. She walked the jury through financial records, proving everything Thomas Ashford had suspected and more. Then it was Violet's turn. She entered through a side door escorted by 2 marshals. 18 years old, dressed in simple gray, walking with composure that belied the magnitude of what she was about to do. Frank watched from their front row, his shoulders still aching from wounds only beginning to heal. His son sat beside him, a wall of support for the young woman who had become the center of their family. The prosecutor began with foundational questions. Violet answered with precision, her voice never wavering. Then
I
came the
swear to
recording.
tell the truth,
12 minutes of
the
Victor
whole
and
truth,
Raymond Crane
and nothing but the
discussing
truth.
logistics, payments, and the elimination of a threat named Thomas Ashford. When it ended, silence filled the courtroom like water filling a vessel. Violet spoke into that silence. That is my father they are discussing. That is Raymond Crane ordering his death. And that is Victor Crane agreeing to carry out the murder. The defense attorney attacked her credibility, her memory, her motivations. He suggested she was a traumatized child inventing stories. Violet dismantled each argument with surgical precision. When the attorney questioned her motives, she looked directly at Victor Crane and spoke words that would be quoted in newspapers across the country. I did not come here seeking revenge. Revenge is personal, emotional, ultimately empty. I came here seeking justice. There is a difference, and men like Victor Crane cannot understand that difference because they have never experienced accountability. They believe wealth and power place them above the law. Today we prove them wrong. The jury deliberated for 9 hours. When they returned, the foreman's voice trembled as he read verdicts. Guilty on all counts of drug trafficking. Guilty on all counts of money laundering. Guilty on all counts of racketeering. And guilty on 2
I swear to
counts
tell
of
the
murder
truth,
in the first degree.
the whole truth,
Victor Crane's
and
face
nothing
went
but the
white.
truth.
His attorney slumped in defeat. The gallery erupted. But Frank's attention was fixed on his niece. Violet sat perfectly still, tears streaming down her cheeks, hands clasped in her lap. 4 years of hiding. 4 years of wondering. 4 years of carrying a burden no child should bear. And now finally the weight was beginning to lift. The sentencing hearing took place 3 weeks later. Victor Crane received life without possibility of parole. Raymond Crane, who had negotiated a plea agreement in exchange for testimony against his son, was granted house arrest for his remaining months. Pancreatic cancer would serve as his final judge. He died 6 weeks later alone in the house where he had built an empire that his son had destroyed. Helena Frost and the 3 city council members faced separate trials that stretched through spring and into summer. One by one they fell before the weight of evidence. The mayor received 25 years. The councilmen received sentences ranging from 10 to 15 years. By the time autumn arrived, Silverpine had been transformed. A special election replaced imprisoned officials, with reformers campaigning on transparency and accountability. The new mayor made her first official act a public apology to the
I
Ashford
swear to
family
tell the truth,
for failures that
the
had
whole
allowed their
truth,
murders to go
and nothing
unpunished.
but the truth.
The FBI closed the Crane investigation with a final report documenting a criminal enterprise that had operated for 4 decades and generated profits exceeding $500 million. Assets were seized, accounts frozen, properties auctioned to fund victim compensation. And through it all, the Thornwood family found its way back together. 3 years passed. Frank stood on the porch of the ranch house watching the sun sink behind mountains that had witnessed 4 generations of Thornwood struggles and triumphs. He was 65 now, hair more silver than brown body carrying the accumulated weight of decades. But his eyes were clear and his heart was full in ways he had never expected. The sound of vehicles on gravel pulled his attention to the present. Sebastian's sedan appeared first, followed by Kieran's truck and the compact Violet had purchased with money saved from her university job. They arrived for Sunday dinner every week. Now a tradition started during the trials that had somehow survived into peacetime. The front door opened behind him, and Dominic emerged carrying a platter of steaks. His eldest son had changed in ways beyond the obvious. The ice in his gaze had thawed, replaced by warmth that still surprised people who remembered the silent, haunted man he had been. A gold band glinted
I
on his
swear to
left
tell
hand.
the truth,
His wife Elena,
whole
a
truth,
social worker
and
who had
nothing
approached
but
him
the
about
truth.
veterans resources and stayed for different reasons entirely, was setting the table inside. The family gathered on the back deck as sky turned orange and purple. Frank looked around at faces that had become familiar, again at relationships rebuilt from wreckage. Sebastian sat beside Amanda, a high school teacher who laughed at his terrible jokes. Kieran had brought Diego, a 19-year-old mechanic whose father had worked for Crane Industries and was serving time. And Violet sat at Frank's right hand, her eyes reflecting firelight, her presence a reminder of everything lost and everything found. She was 21 now, a junior at the university, fielding offers from federal agencies interested in her unique capabilities. Frank raised his glass. Conversation fell silent. 4 years ago, I thought my life was over. I was waiting in this house. Then a letter arrived from my brother and everything changed. He paused, gaze moving from face to face. Thomas asked me to protect his daughter. He asked me to finish what he started. With help from everyone at this table, that is exactly what we did. But what we built along the way was something more than justice. We built a family. Violet reached over and took his hand. We do not get to choose circumstances of birth or
I swear to tell the
tragedies that
truth,
shape us.
the
But
whole
we do
truth,
get to choose
and
how we
nothing but the
respond.
truth.
Every person here chose courage over fear, love over isolation, hope over despair. He raised his glass higher. To Thomas and Evelyn, who gave everything to expose the truth. To Margaret, who made me the man I needed to become. And to all of you who gave an old man a reason to keep living. They drank, and the moment held suspended in amber Colorado light. Later, after dishes were cleared, Frank and Violet walked together to the small cemetery at the edge of the property. 2 headstones had been added since the trial markers for Thomas and Evelyn, standing beside generations of thornwoods. Violet knelt before her parents' graves, placing flowers she had brought from town. Lavender for her mother, white roses for her father. I still talk to them sometimes. Her voice was soft. I tell them about school, about cases the FBI wants me to consult on, about how Dominic actually smiles now. I like to think they can hear me. Frank stood beside her. I believe they can, and I believe they are proud of you. Violet rose and turned to face him. I used to be so angry. After I learned the truth, I wanted to burn everything down. I thought revenge was the same as justice. But you learned the
I
difference.
swear to tell the truth,
I learned that revenge
the whole
destroys the
truth,
person who seeks
and nothing but the
that
truth.
the only way to honor what Mom and Dad sacrificed was to become someone they would be proud of. She looked back at the headstones. They wanted me to live. Not just survive, but really live. To find love and purpose and joy. That is their legacy. Frank pulled his niece into an embrace. You are that person. You are the difference they believed in. And whatever comes next, you will never face it alone. They stood together in gathering darkness, 2 survivors looking toward a future neither could have imagined 4 years ago. Behind them, ranch house lights glowed warm and golden. Laughter drifted across evening air. Sebastian's voice raised in mock outrage. Dominic's rare chuckle. The sounds of family, of connection, of lives being lived rather than merely endured. Frank thought of Margaret, of Thomas, of all the years he had spent chasing justice across state lines, while his own family learned to live without him. None of it compared to this moment. Not a purpose defined by his badge, not a legacy measured in arrests, but something simpler and more profound. A place to belong, people who loved him, a reason to wake up every morning. That was what Thomas had wanted him to find when he
I
wrote
swear to
that
tell the
letter.
truth,
Not revenge,
the whole truth,
not even
and
justice,
nothing but the truth.
but renewal, redemption, a chance to become the man he should have been all along. Violet squeezed his hand, and together they turned back toward the house. The night was cold, but warmth waiting inside would more than compensate. And somewhere Frank liked to believe Thomas and Evelyn were watching, smiling, at peace. Their daughter was home. Their sacrifice had meaning. Their story, though ending in tragedy, had given birth to something beautiful. The Thornwood family, broken for so long, had finally become whole. And that was enough. That was more than enough. That was everything.